Hey there, friends. Welcome back to our channel, where we share heartwarming stories that remind us of the incredible power of kindness and second chances. Today, we've got a tale that'll tug at your heartstrings, a 10-year-old girl from a small Tennessee town who risked everything to save a broken dog at an auction, and what happens next will leave you in awe. If you love stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a child and her pup, you won't want to miss this. So, grab a cozy spot, hit that subscribe button to join our growing family, and let's dive into this beautiful journey together. The auctioneer's gavel slammed down with a sharp crack that reverberated through the weathered wooden walls of the old county barn in Willow Creek, Tennessee. Sold. To the young lady in the back. The words hung in the air, followed by a ripple of whispers from the crowd. Heads turned, eyes narrowing with curiosity and skepticism, as 10-year-old Clara Bennett stepped forward, her small hands clutching a dented biscuit tin that held every penny she'd ever saved. At just over 4 feet tall, with freckles dusting her cheeks and a determined glint in her hazel eyes, Clara didn't look like the typical bidder at the annual Willow Creek livestock auction. But there she was, weaving through a sea of cowboy hats and work boots, her chin tilted upward despite the towering adults who muttered their disapproval. In the auction pen, a German shepherd named Rusty lay curled in the corner. His ribs jutting out like the rungs of a ladder, his once shiny coat now a patchwork of dull fur and scabs. His amber eyes, clouded with exhaustion, barely flicked toward the crowd. To most, he was a lost cause, a dog who'd failed his service training, plagued by health issues, and destined for a grim fate. But Clara saw something different. She saw a flicker of life. A quiet strength buried beneath the neglect, and she knew she couldn't let him go without a fight. "Little girl, you sure about this?" the auctioneer, Mr. Hargrove, called out. His voice gruff as he counted the crumpled bills and coins Clara had poured onto the table. "This dog's been returned 3 times. He's sick, untrainable, probably won't last the month." Clara's heart raced, but her voice was steady. "I'll take him, sir. I've got $189.62, and I know how to take care of dogs. My grandpa taught me." A murmur of recognition passed through the crowd at the mention of her grandfather. Henry Bennett, a beloved dog trainer in Willow Creek until his passing 2 years prior. Mr. Hargrove hesitated, his weathered face softening for a moment, but he shook his head. "Your mama know you're here, kid?" Clara nodded quickly, though it was only half true. Her mother, Laura Bennett, had dropped her off at the auction on her way to her shift at the local diner, with strict instructions to just look and stay with her friend's uncle at the snack stand. But Clara had other plans. She reached through the wire fence of the pen, her fingers trembling as they stretched toward Rusty. The dog's ear twitched, and one amber eye met hers. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a promise that neither fully understood but both felt deep in their bones. Clara knew this dog was meant to be hers, and she was meant to be his. What she didn't know was that this impulsive act of compassion would not only save Rusty's life but would also transform their small Tennessee town in ways no one could have predicted. Clara Bennett had always been a little different from the other kids in Willow Creek. While her classmates spent their pocket money on ice cream at the general store or new sneakers for the school year, Clara squirreled away every dime in her biscuit tin, a keepsake that once belonged to her grandpa Henry. Henry had been a legend in their rural community, a man who could turn the most stubborn mutts into loyal companions with nothing but patience and a few whispered words. He'd passed away unexpectedly from a stroke when Clara was 8, leaving her and her mother to navigate a world that felt a little emptier without his booming laugh and steady presence. The grief had hit Clara hard, but she found solace in the memories of the hours she'd spent at Henry's side, watching him work in the old barn behind their farmhouse, learning the secrets of canine behavior that he'd scribbled in a leather-bound notebook. "You've got your grandpa's gift, Clara," her mother, Laura, would say, watching her daughter coax a skittish stray into eating from her hand or calm a neighbor's yappy terrier with a gentle touch. It wasn't just a talent, it was Clara's lifeline, a way to keep Henry close when the pain of his absence threatened to swallow her whole. Life in Willow Creek hadn't been easy since Henry's passing. The town's main employer, a textile mill, had shut down a year ago, leaving families like the Bennetts scraping by. Laura worked long hours at the diner, her nursing school dreams put on hold as she struggled to pay the bills. Their modest farmhouse, perched on a few acres at the edge of town, was a patchwork of peeling paint and creaky floors, with a barn that Henry had turned into a training space now standing mostly empty. A silent reminder of dreams cut short. Willow Creek faced more than just economic hardship. Resources for families with special needs were nearly non-existent, forcing parents to drive hours to Nashville for therapy or support services. Clara had seen this struggle up close through her best friend, Mia Carter, whose little brother, Ethan, had epilepsy. Ethan's seizures were unpredictable, and the family couldn't afford a trained service dog to help him feel safe. Clara often thought about how much a dog like the ones her grandpa trained could change Ethan's life, if only such help were within reach for a small town like theirs. The German Shepherd in the auction pen was a heartbreaking sight. His coat was matted, his skin irritated, and one ear flopped forward while the other stood upright, giving him a lopsided look of confusion. But it was his eyes that captured Clara's heart, amber and intelligent. They held a depth of sorrow that seemed almost human, as if he carried a story no one had bothered to hear. Clara had first heard about the auction from Mrs. Carter, Mia's mom, who'd mentioned it while dropping off a jar of homemade peach preserves. "They're selling off animals from a service dog program that went under," Mrs. Carter had said, her voice heavy with the weight of small-town gossip. "It's a shame, some of those dogs were so close to being ready to help folks." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her tiny room, her mind racing with thoughts of those dogs. What would happen to them? Where would they go? By morning, she'd made up her mind, she had to go to the auction, even if just to see. The biscuit tin under her bed held $189.62, money she'd saved from birthdays, Christmas gifts, and odd jobs like raking leaves for Mr. Dawson or helping Mrs. Ellis organize her attic. Over breakfast, she tried to sound casual as she pushed her oatmeal around her bowl. "Mama, can I go to the county auction on Saturday? Mrs. Carter said they've got dogs there from a training program that closed." Laura looked up from her coffee, her eyes tired from a double shift. "The auction? What for, honey? We can't afford a dog right now, the vet bills alone." Clara nodded quickly. "I know, I just want to look. Maybe I can help somehow." After some back and forth, Laura agreed to drop Clara off on her way to work, but with a firm reminder, "Just looking, Clara. I'll pick you up at noon." Saturday dawned with a sky full of heavy gray clouds. The air thick with the promise of rain. The Willow Creek Fairgrounds were alive with activity, trucks and trailers unloading livestock, vendors setting up stalls, and the hum of voices as folks gathered for the auction. Clara clutched her biscuit tin inside her backpack, her heart pounding as she made her way to the animal pens at the far end of the grounds. Most of the dogs were alert, wagging their tails as volunteers walked them, Labradors, Golden Retrievers, and German Shepherds, all breeds often trained as service animals. They looked well cared for despite the program's collapse. But in the farthest pen, separated from the others, lay Rusty, so still that Clara thought he might be gone. His ribs were stark against his dull coat, and flies buzzed around his ears without so much as a twitch from him. "What's wrong with that one?" Clara asked a volunteer who was filling water bowls. The woman glanced over, her face falling. "That's Rusty. He was returned by 3 families who tried to adopt him. Started having seizures during his training, medical costs were too much for the program to handle. He's on the auction list, but... She trailed off, but Clara understood. Rusty was on borrowed time. Kneeling by the pen, Clara whispered, "Hey, Rusty." The dog's ear twitched. And one amber eye opened, meeting hers with a weary gaze that seemed to ask, "Why are you here?" As the auction began, Clara edged closer to the front of the crowd, her hand gripping the biscuit tin. Mr. Hargrove moved quickly through the items, tools, livestock, and then the dogs. The trained ones went for prices that made Clara's stomach drop, $1, $200, $1,800, some even higher. Then it was Rusty's turn. Two handlers entered his pen, half carrying him to the auction block as he struggled to stand. Next up, Lot 52, male German Shepherd, about 3 years old. Mr. Hargrove announced. Some health issues, started service training but didn't finish. Bidding starts at $100. The crowd was silent. Do I hear $75? Anyone? These animals need homes. Folks. Clara's hand shot up before she could overthink it. $50, she called, her voice cracking. Mr. Hargrove squinted into the crowd. Who made that bid? Clara stepped forward, feeling every eye on her. I bid $50, she said, louder this time. A murmur spread through the crowd. Mr. Hargrove looked uneasy. Little girl, this dog's got problems, needs medical care. Special attention. Clara stood her ground. I've got $189.62, and I know about dogs. My grandpa was Henry Bennett. Recognition flickered across the auctioneer's face. Henry's name still carried weight in Willow Creek. But he pressed, your parents need to. Clara cut in, my mama dropped me off. She knows I'm here. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. Mr. Hargrove sighed. Going once at $50, going twice, sold to the young lady in the front. The next hour was a whirlwind. Clara completed the paperwork with help from Mrs. Carter's brother, who worked at the fairgrounds and had seen the commotion. He called Laura at the diner. Leading to a heated conversation Clara could hear even without the phone on speaker. By the time Laura arrived, her face flushed with worry, the transaction was done, Rusty was officially Clara's. Along with a thin folder of his medical and training history. Clara May Bennett. Laura began, storming toward her daughter, but her words faltered when she saw Rusty lying weakly on the ground. Clara's small hand stroking his head as she whispered to him. They were gonna put him down, Mama, Clara said softly, not looking up. Nobody wanted him. Laura closed her eyes. Torn between frustration and the echo of her father-in-law's compassion she saw in her daughter. We can't afford this, Clara. The vet bills, he looks so sick. Clara's voice was quiet but firm. Grandpa's emergency fund. He'd want us to use it for this. The fund, a small savings Henry had left for them, was meant for their future, but looking at Clara's determined expression, Laura saw a spark of healing she hadn't been able to give her daughter since Henry's death. The drive home was silent. Rusty sprawled across the back seat, his head in Clara's lap. He was too weak to sit up, but his eyes stayed fixed on the girl who'd saved him, as if trying to understand why she'd chosen him when everyone else had walked away. By the time they reached their farmhouse, word of Clara's auction purchase had spread through Willow Creek's tight-knit gossip network. Mrs. Carter was waiting on their porch with a dog bed and a bag of supplies. Mr. Dawson, a retired farmer who lived down the road, arrived soon after with his daughter, a vet tech, offering to check Rusty for free. As Rusty was carried into the house, past the dusty training equipment in the barn that hadn't been touched since Henry's passing, a sense of purpose filled the Bennett home, something that had been missing for 2 long years. Clara didn't know it yet, but this moment was the beginning of a journey that would change not just her life, but the lives of everyone in Willow Creek. The first week with Rusty was a test of Clara's resolve in ways she hadn't expected. Despite her determination and the knowledge she'd absorbed from her Grandpa Henry's training notebook, she found herself overwhelmed by the German Shepherd's fragile condition. Rusty wouldn't eat, staring blankly at the bits of boiled chicken or scrambled eggs Clara offered, his amber eyes dull and lifeless. Each morning before school, Clara sat by his bed in the corner of their small kitchen, whispering, "Please, Rusty, just a little bite." But the dog turned his head away, his body seeming to exist without any will to keep going. At night, Clara read aloud from Henry's notebook, hoping her voice might comfort Rusty. Laura often found her daughter asleep beside the dog's bed, one hand resting on his bony frame. Though worried about Clara's growing attachment to a dog that seemed beyond saving, Laura couldn't bring herself to dim the light of purpose that had returned to her daughter's eyes. By the 5th day, Rusty had lost even more weight, and Clara came home from school to overhear her mother on the phone with the vet, discussing humane options. Heartbroken, Clara ran to the barn, seeking solace among Henry's old training equipment. Surrounded by the faint scent of leather and hay, she let herself cry for the first time since bringing Rusty home. "I don't know what to do. Grandpa," she sobbed into the empty space. "I thought I could save him like you would've. I thought I was good with dogs like you said." A soft hand on her shoulder made her jump. It was Mrs. Carter, who'd stopped by with a pot of soup for the Bennets. The older woman sat beside Clara on the bench where Henry used to plan his training sessions. "Your grandpa didn't always get it right on the first try. You know," Mrs. Carter said, her voice warm. "The first dog he ever worked with was a lot like your Rusty, wouldn't eat, wouldn't move. Henry was ready to give up." Clara wiped her eyes. "What happened?" Mrs. Carter smiled. "He figured out the dog had been trained to eat only on a specific command from his old owner. Once Henry cracked that, everything changed. Sometimes, Clara, it's not about trying harder, it's about understanding what's already there." Mrs. Carter's words lit a spark in Clara. That evening, she spread Rusty's paperwork from the training program across the kitchen table, poring over every detail. Laura joined her, using her limited medical knowledge to decipher the notes. "Look at this," Laura said, pointing to a scribbled note in the margin. "It says, responds to original handler commands only, needs retraining for transition." What if? Clara was already flipping through Henry's notebook. Grandpa wrote about this. Some dogs get so bonded to their first trainer, they won't respond to anyone else. Together, they made a list of common service dog commands to try. The next morning, instead of placing food in front of Rusty, Clara set the bowl nearby and said clearly, "Rusty, take food." Nothing. She tried again. "Rusty, meal time." Still nothing. After several failed attempts, Clara remembered a note from Henry's book about unique commands used to prevent dogs from responding to strangers. She locked eyes with Rusty and said firmly, "Rusty, nourish." The dog's ear twitched. Clara held her breath. "Rusty, nourish," she repeated. Slowly, painfully, Rusty lifted his head, dragged himself to the bowl, and took a small piece of chicken. Laura, watching from the doorway, pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Rusty ate 3 pieces before collapsing from exhaustion. But it was enough, a breakthrough that reignited Clara's hope. Discovering Rusty's command responsiveness was a turning point. Clara created a system to reintroduce commands, documenting what worked and what didn't in a notebook she titled Rusty's Recovery. Mrs. Carter, who'd been a vet assistant before retiring, visited daily, bringing supplements to help Rusty regain strength. "The seizures in his records worry me," she admitted after observing Rusty. "They might be from malnutrition, but they could be neurological. We need to be ready." On the 7th day, Clara saw Rusty's first seizure. One moment he was responding to a command, the next he collapsed, his body trembling. Remembering Henry's advice, Clara stayed calm, timing the episode with her watch, 2 minutes and 48 seconds. When Rusty relaxed, exhausted but awake, Clara whispered, "You're okay, boy. I've got you." Laura, who'd watched in awe, sat beside Clara on the kitchen floor. "Your grandpa would be so proud of you," she said softly. "Not just for helping Rusty, but for being so brave." Clara leaned into her mother. "Mrs. Carter thinks the seizures might get better with food and medicine. And even if they don't, we can manage them." As the weeks passed, Rusty's small victories piled up. By week 3, he could stand for short periods. By week 5, he took his first shaky steps around the kitchen. His coat began to shine again, and his eyes, once dull, now sparkled with life. When Clara came home from school, Rusty would lift his head to greet her, sometimes even trying to stand. But the biggest change was in Clara. The quiet, grieving girl who'd pulled away from friends after Henry's death was coming back to life. Rusty's needs gave her purpose, and his progress restored her confidence. As spring arrived in Willow Creek, Rusty's transformation blossomed. The skeletal dog now moved with growing confidence, his black and tan coat gleaming in the sunlight. Clara adapted Henry's training routines, leading Rusty on longer walks each day. Laura, watching from the kitchen window, marveled at the change in both of them. Clara's nightmares, which had haunted her since Henry's death, faded as Rusty began sleeping at the foot of her bed, his presence a quiet comfort. "They're healing each other," Mrs. Carter observed during a visit. "Henry always said the most broken dogs can become the most loyal once they learn to trust." The seizures remained a challenge, but their frequency dropped with proper care. Clara became an expert at spotting the warning signs, a slight stumble, a faraway look in Rusty's eyes, and kept detailed records of each episode. At a vet checkup, Dr. Lawson was impressed. "You've got a knack for this, Clara," he said, reviewing her notes. "This is better than most reports I get from my staff." Clara's approach went beyond physical care. Drawing from Henry's philosophy that mental stimulation was key for working dogs, she began teaching Rusty simple tasks, fetching a ball, responding to hand signals. One evening, she showed Laura a breakthrough. "Watch this, Mama." She held her palm out and said, "Rusty, settle." The dog lay down, eyes alert. With another gesture, he stood and moved to her side. "He knows advanced commands," Clara exclaimed. "He must have been further along in his training than they thought." Curious, Clara tested more service dog commands from Henry's books. To her amazement, Rusty knew over 20, including retrieving items and bracing for support, though he was still too weak for the latter. One rainy afternoon, while sorting through Henry's old desk, Clara found a locked drawer. A key taped under the desk opened it, revealing letters between Henry and a service dog organization called Southern Paws Assistance. "Mama, look," Clara called, spreading the papers on the table. Grandpa was working with the group that trained Rusty. They were asking his advice on training seizure-alert dogs. The connection hit them both. Rusty had been part of a program Henry helped create. As if fate had brought them together. Digging deeper into Rusty's records, they found another surprise. Rusty hadn't developed seizures during training. He'd been chosen for the Seizure Alert program because of his sensitivity to human seizures. His own seizures started only after the program's funding cuts led to poor care. He wasn't failing, Clara realized. He was training to be a seizure-alert dog, but he got sick before he could finish. This changed everything. With Mrs. Carter's help and Henry's notes, Clara began seeing Rusty as a professional in training, not just a rescue. If he was that far along, maybe they could finish what the program started. Clara dove into research on seizure-alert dogs, reaching out to trainers online. Most dismissed her because of her age, but one retired trainer, impressed by her knowledge, agreed to mentor her through email. As summer arrived, Clara and Rusty settled into a routine: morning walks, midday command practice, and afternoons working on specialized skills like navigating obstacles and alerting to seizures. Laura, initially worried about Clara's intense focus, saw the healing it brought. The training gave Clara structure, and each success with Rusty helped her process her grief. The community's skepticism about Clara's ability to save Rusty slowly turned to curiosity. Then support. Mr. Dawson built training obstacles for the barn as a surprise for Clara's 11th birthday. Even her teacher, Ms. Harper, brought books on dog training, inspired by Clara's dedication. The turning point came at Willow Creek's 4th of July festival. Laura was hesitant to bring Rusty, worried about his seizures, but Clara insisted he was ready. At the crowded town square, Rusty stayed calm, walking perfectly at Clara's side despite the noise and chaos. When the band started playing, startling other dogs, Rusty remained focused on Clara. The most powerful moment came when Ethan Carter, Mia's brother, began showing signs of a seizure. Without a command, Rusty positioned himself beside Ethan, creating a barrier between the boy and the crowd. Ethan's distress eased as he focused on the dog, his breathing steadying. Mrs. Carter, tears in her eyes, hugged Clara afterward. "That wasn't just training," she said. "That was something special." Word of Rusty's actions spread through Willow Creek, and Clara found herself explaining service dogs to neighbors, showing how they could help with disabilities. Rusty's seizures, once a mark against him, became part of a story of resilience, a dog who overcame his own challenges to help others. As summer progressed, Clara made a bold decision about Rusty's training. Instead of focusing solely on seizure alert work, she adapted his skills to meet the needs she saw in Willow Creek. The town had no service dogs, and the nearest program was hours away with a long wait list. "Grandpa always said a good trainer listens to the dog," Clara told Laura. "Rusty's showing he can do more than one thing. I think we should follow his lead." Laura, having seen Rusty's intuitive response to Ethan, agreed. Through careful observation, Clara identified Rusty's strengths: focus in chaotic settings, protective positioning around vulnerable people, and precise item retrieval by scent. These skills made him a candidate for multiple support roles. One hot August day, as Clara and Rusty trained in the barn, an unexpected visitor arrived. Sarah Miller, the mother of Clara's classmate Jake, pulled up in her SUV. Laura greeted her, surprised by the visit from someone she knew only casually. "I've heard about what Clara's doing with that dog," Sarah said nervously. "Jake's been having anxiety attacks since his dad's accident last year. I was wondering if Clara could talk to him, maybe show him how she handles Rusty's seizures. He won't open up to his therapist, but he loves dogs." Clara demonstrated Rusty's skills, and during the visit, Rusty showed an unexpected behavior. He stayed close to Jake, maintaining contact and displaying an alert posture. Minutes later, Jake had a small anxiety episode, and Rusty's presence helped him calm down faster than usual. "This changes everything," Clara whispered to Laura that evening. "Rusty isn't just a project, he can really help kids like Jake." But this realization brought a new question. If Rusty could do so much good, should he stay with Clara, or did he belong with someone who needed him more? It was a big question for a 10-year-old. But Clara approached it with thoughtfulness beyond her years. "Grandpa would say dogs choose their people as much as people choose them," she mused, sitting on the porch with Rusty's head in her lap. "But how do we know who Rusty's supposed to help?" The answer came after a vet visit with Dr. Lawson. Reviewing Rusty's latest tests, he said, "His health has improved a lot. But the seizures will likely stay. We can manage them, but he'll need ongoing care." On the drive home, Clara was quiet, then spoke up. "I know what we need to do. Rusty can't be a full-time service dog for one person because of his seizures. But he can still help lots of people in a different way. Her idea was groundbreaking. Rusty would become a community resource, working with kids who had seizures, anxiety, or sensory issues. He'd stay with Clara as his primary handler but be available for scheduled sessions and educational events. His own seizures would be part of his story, showing kids that challenges didn't stop you from making a difference. The plan needed adjustments to traditional service dog rules, but Clara found support from unexpected places. Ms. Harper helped her pitch the idea to the school board, showing how Rusty could support students with special needs. Dr. Lawson offered to monitor Rusty's health for free. The local library even agreed to host Reading with Rusty sessions, where kids could practice reading aloud to him in a safe space. As fall arrived, Rusty's schedule filled with meaningful work. Tuesdays, he was at the library, lying patiently as shy readers gained confidence. Thursdays, Jake Miller came for calm time sessions, where Rusty helped him manage anxiety. Weekends, Clara and Rusty did community events, teaching people about service dogs. "You've built something amazing," Mrs. Carter told Clara, watching Rusty work with Ethan during a session. Not just saving a dog, but showing what service can mean for kids and animals with challenges. Clara smiled, watching Rusty guide Ethan through a task to improve his focus. Grandpa said our biggest challenges show us our purpose. Rusty's seizures didn't stop him, they made him perfect for a different kind of service. What started as a desperate bid at an auction had grown into something bigger, a new way of thinking about service dogs that put community first. Word of Rusty's role in Willow Creek spread beyond the town. Local papers ran stories about the community service dog, and organizations reached out to Laura and Clara about starting similar programs in other rural areas. On a cool October morning, as Clara finished Rusty's training in the barn, Laura appeared with news. "Someone's here to see you and Rusty," she said. A Dr. Margaret Ellis from the American Service Dog Alliance. Dr. Ellis, a kind woman with a warm smile, had read about Rusty's story. "What you've done here is exactly what our organization wants to support," she said over coffee. "We're starting a program for multi-purpose service dogs for kids with complex needs. And your model fits perfectly. We'd like to partner with you, help rebuild your training space, cover Rusty's medical care, and share your methods with other communities." Unlike past offers, this one didn't ask Clara to give up Rusty. It was a true partnership, keeping Rusty in Willow Creek while providing resources to grow their work. It also included legal protection to ensure no one could take Rusty away. That evening, Dr. Lawson called with more good news. Rusty's latest tests showed improvement, his seizures were less frequent, and his health was stabilizing. "He's a fighter," Dr. Lawson said. "And whatever they bred him for, they made something extraordinary." 6 months later, on a bright spring day, Clara stood at the entrance of the newly built Bennett Rusty Training Center. The modern facility, funded by the Alliance, had spaces for training, therapy, and education, with a sign above the door showing a German Shepherd silhouette. The opening ceremony drew a crowd, locals, media, and Alliance members. Sheriff Daniels spoke first, recounting Clara's journey from the auction to this moment. Dr. Ellis presented the center's official certification as an Alliance affiliate, meaning they could train and play service dogs across the region. The kids Rusty had helped gave Clara a scrapbook, each page a drawing of their time with him. Jake Miller spoke for the group. "Before Rusty, I was scared all the time. He showed me it's okay to be different, it's what makes you special." As the event wound down, Clara sat with Rusty in a small garden area, a quiet space for kids to relax. "We did it, boy," she whispered, stroking the scar on Rusty's side from a minor injury during training. Rusty leaned into her, his amber eyes full of trust. Laura joined them. a notebook in hand. "The Alliance wants to start a program to train kids like you to be handlers," she said. "They think you'd be perfect to lead it." Clara looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "Teaching other kids to do what I do with Rusty?" Laura nodded. "They're calling it the Junior Handler Program. You'd have all the help you need." As the sun set over Willow Creek, the Bennett family stood together at the center's entrance, the sign glowing above them. "Grandpa talked about leaving a legacy," Laura said, her arm around Clara. "He'd be amazed at what you've built." Clara hugged her mom, Rusty at her side. What started as a 10-year-old's act of kindness had grown into a movement, showing a small Tennessee town, and the world, that the things others overlook often hold the greatest potential. In saving Rusty, Clara had found her purpose, and in their partnership, they'd created a legacy of healing and hope that would last for years to come. What can we learn from Clara and Rusty's incredible journey? Sometimes, the things others overlook, like a broken dog or a grieving child, hold the greatest potential for love and change. Clara's compassion and Rusty's resilience remind us that our challenges don't define us. They can lead us to our true purpose, especially when we lift each other up. In a world that can feel divided, this story shows the power of community, second chances, and seeing value where others see none. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What did this story mean to you? Have you ever found purpose in an unexpected place? Drop a comment below, give this video a like if it touched your heart. And don't forget to share it with someone who needs a little hope today.